Okay, everybody, welcome back. This is Engineering Management, and this is not December yet, but we're getting there. Let's actually take a look real quick here and see how many weeks we have left. We have 4 weeks left, according to somebody who just spit out 4. I got today, I got the 25th, the 2nd, and the 9th. And then I think we have we have 1, 2, 3. Oh, let me see if I can count, actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks left. When is the exam? Is it on this week? Or is it on this week? Oh, 4 weeks left in the exam. Okay, that's good. So 4 weeks left of class. And so today I'm going to go over assignment number 3. That one is due, everything is due on the 16th, by the way. Assignment number 3 has to deal with lecture number 11. So write down MIT/lecture 11. This is the one that's going to help you with assignment number 3. And I have not gone over assignment number 3. I was waiting to go over the lecture before I did that one. So this is the last of the 3 assignments, plus you have the case studies. I believe there's only 3 assignments. And this one here, you're looking at engineering management, software engineering, software systems, and technology that can build in order to gain competitive advantages over your rival companies, yada yada. You got Harder's 5 forces model that examines how the forces outside a company's control can be affected by the strategic plan and position of the company, yada yada. The part I want to really discuss is this last paragraph. Can companies that develop and implement new information systems protect themselves from competitors by seeking patents on their software design? So I'm going to talk about patents, copyright, trademark infringement, and intellectual property today. That's the theme of today's lecture. Also part of lecture number 11 of the Information Technology series. So looking at, and I'm going to answer this question for you today, how unique would the system need to be to warrant an issue of such of a patent, as an example, and what would be the company, and would the company be accused of attempting to monopolize in its industry if it were successful at achieving this? And outside of the patent, what other things can the company do to protect themselves against its competitors? So protecting information systems, protecting the company, protecting the system itself. First thing you're going to need to know what a patent is referring to. Outside of a patent, the second part of it is what do you think from another approach would be to accomplish the same task. So what other strategies or ideas can you come up with, yada yada, unique systems to make them safe from being copied. So let's talk about this today. So in lecture number 11, the title of the lecture, it's called Protecting People and Information, Threats and Safeguards. So looking at ethics and describing 2 factors that affect decision making and ethical issues in general, fair use doctrine, pirating software, describing piracy, defining ways it can be threatened, and different ways to, for computer and computer networks themselves that can be vulnerable, etc. and so forth. Don't really need to go through the stats here, but pretty much people know about identity theft these days on the internet. People also know about 96% of the American households, 9 out of 10 of the largest credit card issuers. So consumers, tons of consumers with credit cards out there, 20 billion records on 110 million people, 96% of the households. Your information is online, by the way. If you're on social media, it's really online. Whatever you put out there is pretty much known to the public. Whether you put it out there as private data or public data, it is known to the public. There's no such thing as privacy on the internet. There should never be any expectation of privacy on the internet. Problem is, though, is that some people don't voluntarily put it out there. For example, would you like your social security number on the internet? A lot of people don't want that, but it ends up out there, actually. It depends on what you do with it. If you stick it out there in something, an email message, a blog posting, a forum response or something, or even a form that you fill out to buy something. Never give out your social security number, by the way. That's a really bad idea. They don't need it for anything. But credit card numbers get out all the time because people buy stuff online with credit cards. Don't buy anything online with a credit card either. Use PayPal or use some other form of payment. You stick it in the form, you send it, it's gone. So they say, oh, it's secure processing. It's going through Safe Connect, and it's going through this, and it's going through that. Yeah, but do you want to trust it? You know, it's kind of like, it still happens in retail stores. You go, in fact, usually people that are on vacation, it happens to them a lot. You're traveling around and you're using your card more than you normally use it, and you give it to somebody on a phone. Yeah, can you make a reservation? Yeah, my credit card number is yada yada. Oh, you just gave it to the world. So expect there to be charges that you didn't make on that card. It's just the expectation, you know. Expect the card to get malused or misplaced, the number itself to be known, problems to exist. So if you have that kind of mentality and you kind of go through, you know, not trusting it, then you'll never be a victim of identity theft. You'll never have a problem with unauthorized charges on your credit card, and you'll never have a problem, basically. And the concept of this lecture is, well, how do companies do that then? Because companies have to sell something to the public. You got to let the public know what you're going to sell. You got to know what price you're selling it at. But then everybody else is going to see everything that goes on. Companies don't necessarily have credit card theft or identity theft or any of the other problems that consumers have. Instead, companies have people stealing their good ideas. They have their intellectual property in terms of their marketing, their product concepts, their packaging, their sales strategy, their pricing model, their manufacturing. Everything is exposed to a certain point. Limiting the exposure is great, but you still have to conduct business. It's kind of like those people who limit exposure on the internet, only buy things through PayPal, don't go and shop out on the open internet. You're kind of, again, limiting yourself. So there's a pro and a con to what level of security you want as a business and what you're going to need to do in order to market and sell your product out there, because you gotta expose something. So it's the level of exposure. So feeling comfortable about people collecting information about you. Is it an invasion of privacy or just good business? Which is actually kind of an interesting concept for companies right now. Are they invading your privacy? Is Google invading your privacy? Actually, right now I think they are. You know, Google is definitely invading with Google Plus and everything else that's going on right now. So a lot of people don't like it. Actually, they're pushing back a little bit on that. I, for one, am actually considering closing down all of my Google activity, Google accounts, because I don't like the invasion of privacy I'm getting right now with that. So, and it's at a pretty low level right now, and it's lawful. So, and the question being, should there be laws regulating the collection and the use of data by data brokers and so forth? So, in terms of an introduction, what are we talking about today? Handling information is a responsibility. Means understanding what's ethical and what's not ethical. What about personal privacy? What is considered an invasion of privacy? The fact that Google reads all of my emails and mines all of the topics and information that comes out of there. Google even knows which subjects I teach and stuff like that, which is amazing. Not really. Actually, some of it's a good thing, some of it's a bad thing. It's like, do you really want to know what schools I teach at and what topics and what courses I've taught? In fact, I can learn a little bit by reading Google because I don't really pay attention to most of this stuff myself. But Google knows all that stuff. And then they send you email messages and stuff, which is interesting. If you follow some of the junk mail that you get, or if you follow some of the advertisements you see on your when you web browse, it's probably related to you. And you think, oh, it's very personal. I like the stuff I get. Yeah, because every one of your emails has been read. They know you like a particular sport, or they know you like a particular product group or something, and you're a Mac user or you're a Windows user or something like that, and they're taking that information from all of your personal email messages and marketing towards you now, which is actually kind of interesting. Anyway, so is it ethical? Personal privacy, what does that really mean these days? Threats to information, protection of information, these are all issues that are of utmost importance. Technology makes breaking the rules easier. It does. When there's technology to read your email, then is it appropriate to read your email is another question that you have to ask, which is actually kind of interesting. So ethics come into place. Ethics in terms of principles. So by definition, ethics are the principles and standards that guide our behavior towards other people. So companies have to be ethical. If companies are not ethical, the people don't trust them and they won't support the company, which is kind of a new concept that's coming out even this year. actually. There's a difference between ethical and unethical companies out there. Rooted in history, culture, and religion. Example, different cultures, different things have different ethics that are associated with it. Factors that determine how to decide ethical issues. As an engineering manager, you have to say, well, okay, so we know everybody's email addresses. We've read all of our employees' emails. We know they're disgruntled because they didn't get Veterans Day off last week. So, do we use that information to promote to them the fact that we're going to get the day after Thanksgiving off? Oh, look, then we can use that, right? It's almost like people, I think that would be unethical, actually, to even read those emails, but they have the right to, and if they have the right to, then theoretically they have the right to make decisions upon what they're going to sell to you and stuff like that. I don't know if I don't know if anyone around here actually reads their email. It might be a fun game to play, actually. Just everybody, all the employees should just send messages out about something, like where's Waldo or something. Some weird thing, like make up a mascot for ITU and keep talking about the mascot. And see if it comes out, like in some meeting, someone go, hey, did you hear about the mascot? Then they're reading your emails. What mascot? Does ITU actually have a mascot? Maybe we should make up a mascot. So, I don't know. Anyway, long story short, information, is it ethical? Well, about 10 years ago, it wasn't ethical. Something happened in the last 5 years. Now it's ethical. Because intellectual property laws changed about less than 10 years ago. So according to today's laws, your email that you send out at company, in fact, right now, anything you're doing on your computer hooked up to the ITU network belongs to ITU. That's how it works now. So if you're working at a company and you're using email for the company, or if you're on the company's network and getting internet access through the company, everything you're doing belongs to them if you're employed by the company. Because your students are taking a course here, I don't necessarily would think you'd fall under the employment agreements. However, as students of the university, anything you submit for a class belongs to ITU. All your assignments, so don't give anything to ITU that doesn't belong to you, first of all. Second of all, don't give them anything personal about your company or anything you work for either, because you could technically be held responsible for it in the future. These laws happened less than 10 years ago, made this possible. So if you're sitting here, not an ITU employee, or I'll just use ITU as an example for today, not to pick on ITU, but we'll just use them as an example because at least I'm familiar with the environment. If you're sitting at your desk and you write a message about, oh, I don't like this person, you could be fired for that, actually. And you say, well, I didn't say that to the person's face, but you still said it. If someone read it over your email message, there's no wrongful termination there, because everything you wrote in email is public property. Anyone who wants to can go to your email account, look at your emails, read your emails. It's as if you posted it on the board in the hallway there on that big screen. So don't say anything like, I hate my boss. Don't ever say anything, not only at IT, but anywhere else. You work at Apple, Microsoft, any company you just pick. As an employee, you don't have the right. You don't have freedom of speech, and there's no expectation of privacy. You book a hotel room, you book an airline flight on your lunch hour. It doesn't matter, you're still using company equipment. It doesn't matter if it's your lunch hour, your break. It doesn't matter. Don't do it on company equipment. Otherwise, technically, somebody else from the company can take that flight for you. It's their flight, really. It's not your flight. You booked it while you were on company equipment using the company network. It belongs to the company. So you might as well just wait till you get home to book the flight. Then you can actually take the flight yourself, technically. So, now, is it ethically unheard of? Probably unheard of that anyone would actually, if anyone were here were booking a flight and you were a TA or you're working at I2, would I be, hey, can I have my flight? I'm not going to ask for my flight that I own because you did it at work. But, who knows what's going to happen in the future if you think about it. In fact, there's a lot of people, if I were saying this 10 years ago, they go, what? You're crazy. That doesn't happen. I'm like, yeah, it does. Now, 10 years later, I can say, yeah, people know everything you're doing in your job because they're reading your emails. Actually, it's even better. Now we have programs that do it for us. In fact, that's what the Google Analytics does actually for you. And in fact, companies can rent or purchase services from Google to perform the analytics for you as well. where you can go through and say, well, how happy are our employees? What are our employees doing? What percentage of time are they spending on this? What percentage of the time are they web browsing? You know, and the reports come in based upon the network traffic. So when you booked the flight or you did something, it would fall under a certain category, and the company would actually see that and actually know who did it too, actually. But long story short, it's expected now. And the point I'm trying to make is ethically it's okay. That's perfectly acceptable and ethically correct. 10 years ago? Not really. Change the culture around, take it out of the US? I don't know how it would work elsewhere. In fact, take it out of California. Right now, that's the expected behavior in California. Take it out to the East Coast or take it to the West, Midwest or something. I don't know if people would think the same way. Ethics are one of those things where, you know, it's very tied towards situations and it's tied towards environments. So factors that determine how to decide on ethical issues would be the actions and ethical dilemmas that are determined by the basic ethical structure. So you'd have to come into place and say, well, what is the ethical structure? Circumstances of the situation and basic ethical structure determines what you consider to be a minor ethical violation, a serious one, or a very serious one. So as an ethical structure, about 10 years ago or so, people in retail stores decided they were going to put cameras in dressing rooms. And we had cameras. We still have cameras in dressing rooms, by the way. But they're only in selected locations in the dressing rooms. They're not inside of the stalls. And if they are inside of the stalls, they're only from the waist up. So, because it's unethical to show from the waist down, apparently, in America. But it's okay to show the top part. Long story short, consumers didn't like that. So, would you call that a minor, a serious, or a very serious one? Depends upon the beholder of who's being violated as to what you like and what you don't like. Yeah, there's video cameras actually at ITU, not in the bathrooms. But every single one of the hallway, don't pick your nose in the hallway because it's going to be recorded, seriously. There's a video camera in this room. I don't know if there is, though. They said they keep threatening to put one in the room. But it's funny, just when you guys leave today, just wave to the camera on the way out. Is that ethically correct? Sure, why not? Is it okay to put it in a dressing room? Some people might argue with that. Is it okay to put it outside the dressing room door and in the hallway and entrance into the dressing room? Yes, it's certainly fine to do that. In front of mirrors, most of your mirrors will also have video cameras and recorded cameras next to it as well. And for most retail stores, depends upon how critical they are in terms of how much theft they've been receiving. This time of year, they get a lot of theft, so expect there to be more cameras out there. But long story short, that's part of the structure, determining, well, do you think it's minor, serious, very serious? What's society's opinion? So here's the basic ethical structure. Society's opinion, is it okay to film somebody in the dressing room? The likelihood of there being an effect. Would it cut down on the number of thefts? Probably. I don't understand what the video cameras in the hallways are supposed to cut down on, though. I don't know. What is that? I don't know if it's theft or why are we videotaped? I don't know. I've never understood that, really. But, you know, this building can get kind of scary at night. So maybe they're just looking for prowlers, something like that. Consequences of having it or not having it. Relatedness. Is it related? That's the question I was raising a few minutes ago with this. In the hallways of the school, do we need, what is it related to? Do we, is it for our security? Why do we have that? Time to consequences, reach of result, what kind of results are we going to get from it? And then we have our layers, very serious violations, serious or minor. If it's a minor ethical violation, it generally becomes acceptable for the most part, which is how we can get away with limited cameras right now in dressing rooms. You can't put it inside of a stall, though, and it's usually only showing. Now they make it so it's like the head, shoulder or head or above. That way they can tell how many people are in the room, which is what they're really concerned with. So, anyway, circumstances of the situation in terms of consequences of the action or inaction, society's opinion of the action, inaction, likelihood of there being effect, time to consequence, readiness, reach of results. Brings us to the concept if we talk about things outside of retail establishments and we talk about companies with big information and secrets to hold, that's where we come in with this intellectual property. So intellectual property, here's another definition for you. So we could steal physical property. We can also steal property that doesn't exist. That's intangible creative work that is embodied by physical form. Well, the secret recipe to the KFC chicken, that's an intellectual property. Believe it or not, the instruction that you're receiving in a course that you're taking is intellectual property. The assignments that you turn in for a course that you're taking is intellectual property. It's property that may or may not have value to it, but it has ownership. Like everything that's inside of your head, all your thoughts, are your own intellectual property. Unless you're being paid to think for somebody else, then it's not your property, it's somebody else's property. So we have things like trade secrets. That's if you're working in a job, you're at the bank, and customer comes up to and you're a bank teller, and someone comes up to you and gives you their account number. That's a trade secret. That's intellectual property, and it's given to you so that you can perform your trade. And it's part of your trade. It's the account number at the bank. So if you took the number, wrote it down on a piece of paper, went home at night, and then would do a withdrawal from this account, you'd ethically be, breaking the law. Well, you're breaking the law, but it'd also be doing something unethical. And you're basically stealing a trade secret and violating the intellectual property laws. So all of it falls under intellectual property as a blanket kind of area of law. But we have different types. We have copyright, trade secrets, fair use, patents, another area that falls into the same category. So it's like, how we have criminal law. Inside of criminal law, we got people who murder other people, we got people who steal things, we got people who break the rules. In criminal law, you can actually, for hitting somebody on a freeway, that's traffic related, but that's part of criminal law, but not paying attention to speed ordinance or parking locations, yada yada. So all it falls under criminal. Intellectual, most of your business stuff is intellectual property law. So it's a strong area of law, and it's equivalent to criminal law. Think about it. Fines are generally sometimes even more severe than they are in criminal law. Which is interesting. You can kill a person, but it's not quite as bad as performing stock market fraud or something, or securities fraud. That guy got more life sentence. Well, I didn't say that guy. Those people get more years of sentences than if you just murdered somebody. So, because it has more damage on a larger percentage of people in the population. So, but long story short. Each one of the laws is put into place to protect the public, to protect the business, and in terms of our intellectual property law. Copyright for software engineering management, copyright, fair use, and patents are pretty much the big area. So copyright is the legal protection afforded an expression of an idea. Well, that's not a very good definition. Basically anything in writing. Anything that's a legal expression. Well, a legal expression is verbal, but it's hard to copyright verbal words. So primarily it's written. So somebody's song that's verbal, but they write the song down. That's copyrightable. A copyright is done on material to protect it to make it copyrightable versus patentable, which is a totally different concept. Something is patentable if it's an idea, a concept, an invention. Not necessarily a written one, but it's written up in terms of the patent application and the patent prosecution process. It's in the writing of the application or the use of the particular idea or concept. So inventions are patentable. Software is copyrightable. Software is not patentable. So going back to that assignment, you can't protect your software by a patent normally, unless it's basically inventing something brand new. Just because you wrote a program that does Hello World doesn't mean that you can patent it, but you could copyright it. And it doesn't matter if your Hello World matches somebody else's Hello World, as long as it's your Hello World. As an example, you're stranded on a deserted island back in the 1980s. in a new programming language, or 70s, let's say 1970s, new programming language called C comes out. You decide you're going to write Hello World, because on the deserted island you have internet access, I guess, and you've got a computer. And you go ahead, you're on an island of your own, you're not communicating with anybody else, and you write Hello World. You sign your name on the bottom of it, and technically that's copyrightable. Somebody else over in America or somebody else writes Hello World, that's copyrightable as well. They wrote it, it's their ideas. Which is why plagiarism is kind of an interesting concept that nobody really pays attention to at this school, but I'm pretty sure that's common everywhere else as well. You plagiarize when you take somebody else's copyrighted material and use it as your own, which is actually kind of funny, because if you both wrote Hello World, person A writes Hello World, person B writes, and I'm going to assume you know what I mean by Hello World, it's just a simple program. You haven't plagiarized anything because you wrote it yourself, and there's probably little minor differences in it too, which makes it copyrightable actually. Now, person on a deserted island gets rescued and comes back to America, and then decides, oh look, as I was gone they invented C, and now there's this programming language out there, and look, somebody wrote Hello World, I like it, I'm going to take that. And you steal it, you use it as your own, then you've done plagiarism, which is a violation of copyright, because you took somebody else's program and you called it your own instead of writing your own program called Hello World. So that's how copyright and plagiarism go hand in hand, because all your textbooks are copyrighted, all the internet, most of the internet material is copyrighted. Some of the internet material is illegally copied that violates copyright protection. Here's what copyright protection does for you, and none of this is on the slide, so I'm just going to give you the verbal explanation of all this. Copyright protection protects you against the illegal reproduction or modification of those words. So if I wrote Hello World and I wrote it a certain way, somebody took my Hello World, changed the words around, that's like a disgrace to my Hello World. That violates my copyright protection because they've altered it without my consent. They took all the integers, i's, and they made them into p's or something instead of i's or something. And they changed main function to print it out backwards or something. They changed it. So they ruined it. If I'm the original creator of it, I'm not going to like that. So in the US, we have this copyright protection that protects the original artist. So the artist has rights, can come back and sue you. Come back and say, hey, why did you put this on your website? It's my poem, or it's my essay, or it's my Hello World program, and you took it. And now people think you did it, so you owe me $10 million or something. No, seriously, people collect on this stuff. What they collect most on these days are images. You take a nice, beautiful picture, you draw something, you put it out on the internet, somebody else takes it without, because anything art, anything written, anything in written form, well, what can you do with a pen? You can draw with a pen, write words with a pen, program with a pen, program with a computer, you know, in terms of typing. Long story short, it's copyrightable. So your images, your icons, your logos, well, that's different. That's trademarkable as well. But all that stuff is stolen constantly, and then people send other people bills in the mail. You know, companies get bills all the time. Hey, your web developer took our images. Oh, here, would you like me to prosecute you in the court, or do you want to settle right now? Here, give me $10 million. Or not really that high, but $10,000. $10,000 to $20,000 is pretty reasonable for stealing a picture, for stealing artwork. Actually, it depends on the artwork. It might even go up to the hundreds of thousands for an artwork, actually. It's a pretty serious violation. You know, the person writing the picture, creating the picture, should have done it themselves. You can do it yourself. That's the thing. There's no need to to violate a copyright protection that somebody else has gotten. So the interesting thing is people go, well, how do you know it's protected? How do you know it's copyright? You see always on the bottom it says copyright at, you know, and usually, you know, Santa Clara, California, location, and then a year during this year, yada yada. Funny thing is that copyright laws go back farther than we think they do. Actually, they come back from common law. And the idea of copywriting is all you have to do is put your name on it. Put your name on it, and then it's yours. which is actually kind of funny because when you guys plagiarize each other, you've performed copyright infringement. If somebody writes an assignment and you have your name on it, somebody else takes the assignment, that's how it turns into plagiarism. You violated copyright infringement because that was copyrighted, whether you knew it or not. It was copyrighted because somebody put their name on it, they called it theirs. So in the old days, believe it or not, this still works. You put it in an envelope, you sign it, put it in an envelope, mail it to yourself, and then it becomes really copyrighted. It's the cheapest way of copywriting, actually. Sign it, seal it, and sign it. You don't necessarily have to mail it to yourself. You can just put it in an envelope, save it. Save it for later because if somebody violates your rights, you say, hey, look, here it is. In 1995, I wrote that Hello World program. You copied me. Hello World is actually copyrighted, by the way. It's not a joke. Somebody copyrighted Hello World. The original creator of Hello World owns it. So just the same way as the original creator of a lot of slogans, like anything with an I next to it is belonged by, well, most of it's Apple oriented. So you just can't go out and say, oh, I'm going to call this an iPad or an iTablet. You don't see those products on the market for a very good reason. I is copyrighted. You can't put that next to your product name. You do that, you're going to violate the laws. Apple's going to ask for a lot more money than another company is going to ask for. It's a bigger infringement. They're bigger. They have more money. They have, more lawyers. They can afford to bring you to court on that one. So copyright is written material. Patents are inventions, things that you're inventing. Trademark is an association. So you can trademark something that's not copyrightable, like a word. So let's talk about ITU as an example. Are we going to do attendance?
Yes.
Okay, I'll get back to that concept in a second. Okay, so what was I talking about? Trademark. So you can take a word, like say for example, ITU, and we can trademark the characters ITU and make them stand for International Technological University. That's a trademark. So you usually have a T and around a circle versus an at copyright, which is an A symbol or at symbol right above your one of your number keys on the keyboard. At number 2, shift 2 on my keyboard, or the at symbol that we get like when we type email messages, something at google.com or whatever. That's copyright. That's a copyright symbol. We have a T for trademark symbol. It's T, capital T, inside of a circle. What does that mean? It's not that it's copyrighted. It has nothing to do with copyright. It's that the association of the acronym with the meaning of the acronym, that's the copyright. So Pepsi, as an example, has a trademark on a Pepsi logo, and also on the word Pepsi. Coca-Cola is trademarked. iPhone is trademarked. Tablet, iPad is trademarked. Anything is trademarked by Apple. So long story short, you take the occurrence of the character sequence or the nature of the representation of the symbol or the acronym, and then it turns into the trademark. So it's not like you're writing something. So it's not like a copy, and it's only trademarked once. Material is hopefully only copyrighted once, but it could fall under multiple copyrights, depending upon how many different versions of it. If you wrote a book, you copyrighted it, and then you wrote another book and you referred to the first book in the second book, you copyrighted it again. Essentially the same material. But trademarks aren't normally duplicated, and trademarks are protecting the likeliness or the likeness. Something is similar or close to where people would accidentally think it was the trademark. So actually this has happened with Coca-Cola, actually for the longest time, because that's one of the oldest trademarks out there, where people would say, like Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola or something, make it sound similar. That's a copyright infringement. Excuse me, that's a trademark infringement, because you're taking their trademark and the likeliness of it and the likelihood of it, and you're making your product look similar to it. So your name looks similar to it, even though it might not be exactly like that. Not nice, not ethical. In fact, illegal, and it's a trademark violation. So we also have this fair use doctrine as a concept as well. So you may use copyrighted materials in certain circumstances. As an example, if you were to get permission from the author that would be a fair use. So if you're using software, you sign what's called a fair use license. And it's a single user fair use license. What does that do? Because somebody owns the copyright to Hello World, they're allowing, whoever owns it, allows somebody else to use it under the fair use doctrine. The fair use doctrine says if I give you permission, it's okay for you to use it. So any copyrighted material that is put inside of quotation marks and referenced properly for an APA, an IEEE, or some other formatting writing source style guide is under fair use doctrine. So if I can say, you know, hey, the dog ran under the bridge, and that was copyrighted by somebody, but I put it inside of quotes and I say, you know, Hecker 19 whatever. When I used it, then I'm giving fair credit, falls under fair use doctrine. So I'm giving fair credit to the source, then that makes it legal and ethical at the same time. So fair use comes under licensing agreements, the ability to reuse something given permission, normally without alteration. If I change the words around, then I got a problem. Because I'm not saying exactly what the original person said. It doesn't fall under fair use. It falls under now plagiarism or doctoring or imitation or infringement of some sort. Because I didn't take what they used exactly the way they used it. If I don't use it exactly the way they use it, then I'm violating the fair use doctrine. Which is kind of ironic when you think about it. But when you make a quotation, make sure to include the correct quotation. Otherwise, the quotation's wrong. You didn't abide by fair use. So you're ethically wrong with that too. As long if you reworded it, paraphrased it, and then put quotes around it and say, hey, that person said this. And that person's not going to like the fact that you said that they said that when it's not right. So using copyrighted software without permission violates copyright law. Pirated software is the unauthorized use, duplication, distribution, or sale of copyrighted software. Most people have heard of copyrighted material. They've heard of pirated software for the most part. To have something pirated is a copyright infringement. So it's just another word that came around, means copyright infringement. It's just the same thing as plagiarism. Plagiarism is another word that came out to say copyright infringement. So when you plagiarize, you copyrighted infringement. If you didn't do it with words, you did it with software, then you pirated software. Copyright infringement. It's all the same thing. So then we have privacy. So this is in terms of intellectual property. We have the property itself, usually intangible, not like a property, but like, you know, not usually of substance, but is of substance. It's just not tangible substance. And you're looking at, you know, something that's protected in terms of a concept or an idea or a thought or an expression. Privacy is the violation of you having that thought or that concept or that intellectual property. It's making it public when you wanted to keep it private. So whereas privacy comes into play. So privacy is the right to be left alone when you want to be, and to have control over your own personal possessions, your intellectual property, and not be observed without your consent. So when you take this trade secret for, take the trade secret for Kentucky Fried Chicken, and you open up my Kentucky Fried Chicken across the street using the same recipe, you've violated privacy and you've also violated trade secrets and probably copyright. So you have multiple different violations all associated with it. That's how the fees get stacked up essentially with that. Or you're an employee and you work for Kentucky Fried. You guys know what Kentucky Fried Chicken is? Yeah, like McDonald's of America. You're an employee and you work for Kentucky Fried Chicken and you decide, I'm going to put this on the internet, and you write the recipe on the internet, then you're privacy violation. Almost as bad of a charge as copyright violation. So to expose something that you're not supposed to expose is a privacy issue. So as an example, going back to the cameras in the dressing room, it's an invasion of privacy. But what if they don't show it to the public? What if they're just showing it internally? Well, depending upon the law says, depending upon what you're showing, you can actually do that. It's against the law to show full nudity and anything below the waist, actually. But you can show the heads, no problem. What are you invading? Anyway, which they do, actually. Most of the heads, most of the above the shoulders, or coming in and going out of dressing rooms are definitely recorded. Most of your retail stores, the entire store is being recorded. Not an invasion of your privacy, because there's no expectation of privacy, which goes into that concept. So is reading an email and having an email privacy, well, this is where we get our ethical issues into place. If you're sending an email on somebody else's account, which is owned by your employer, then there's no expectation of privacy. The company can read your emails, no problem. If your email is going through a public server that's owned by Google, then it's their ownership of it. There's no expectation of privacy either. And if next time you're bored, go online, go and log into your user account for your Google, and read the privacy disclosure and everything that you checked to get your account that said that Google can be profiting from your information. Whatever you're giving them is theirs. Whatever you're writing is their property. There's no expectation of privacy. There's no liability held by Google for anything you do. Like you send someone your address and then your house gets broken into while you're on vacation. No problem. You can't sue Google because you shouldn't put your address out there if that were the case, because there's no expectation of privacy. So if companies do that, then you have privacy laws, expectation laws, and then you get fair use laws. So most companies right now actually have what's called a fair use agreement. The first day you get hired, you sign the fair use agreement. Fair use agreement says anything you write in an email, anything you surf on a web, anything you do on our equipment belongs to us. Which means if you bought your airline ticket to go somewhere and you did it on the company computer, it's their ticket, not yours, you know. And, I mean, who's going to enforce that? Nobody is going to enforce it. But technically in the future they might, which is kind of an interesting, there's people trying to figure out how to do that, actually. You know, you go buy something, you go Christmas shopping on a company computer. Shouldn't the company own everything you bought? You know? I think they should. You know? You did it on their company computer using their resources probably while you were being paid. Or maybe it was on your lunch break. Does it really matter if it's on your lunch break versus when you're supposed to be working? You still use the computer. You use their computer for it and their internet access for it. So.
They could only charge you for using the computer. They cannot charge you for what you want because that's something you bought with your credit card, not companies.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. They can't enforce that. But they're trying. There's people out there that are trying to figure out how to, because technically it belongs to the company. Yeah. So there's a little gray area. I don't know. You can argue it both ways. It's subjective. Well, just go back to your email. So, you know, you think about that concept right now, what I just mentioned about buying something, right? I think 10 years ago, that's how people felt about their email. If they wrote a personal email, they thought it was their email. And then over the last several years, the concept has changed. Now nobody should write anything personal on an email account that's owned by the company, because there's that, you know, there's that problem. So you can be fired and you're not going to get wrongful termination at all. You can actually have criminal charges filed against you for stuff you write in email messages at companies. So now there's a whole group of people who want to do the same thing for purchasing. Why should the company not receive the goods and services that you have purchased using their equipment and their internet access on usually sometimes while you're getting paid to work for the company?
It's like going to the FedEx and you do a purchase and FedEx would say, okay, then we should get this and now you should not get this because you're using our computer to buy
Well,
it.
I'm not saying that. I mean, I agree a little bit, but I'm not saying I agree 100% with it. And they have to figure out a way of enforcing it. So far, we don't have a way of enforcing it. So, but long story short, if you used the company credit card and you bought something, the company is responsible for it, regardless. And whatever you do as an employee over superior over employment law, the employer is responsible for it as well, as long as they can say it was a detour of what your normal job duties were supposed to be. So employees would say, well, that's just a detour. I detoured from what I was supposed to be doing, and then they can fire you for that. Because now you're admitting that you weren't doing your job while you were on your job. So long story short, you can get fired for Christmas shopping. One way or the other, it's not going to be positive, depending upon how the current law sets. But yeah, I know there's a whole group of lobbyists out there that are trying to get it so that if you buy something on a computer and the computer was used during company hours, yada yada, that the company owns whatever you purchased. I mean your airline flight, Everything belongs to the company. So, which, I can sort of see, because intellectual property right now is owned by the company. You write a paper for class, you do it on a company computer, you save it. It belongs to the company. It does not belong to you anymore. And they've got that pretty clear at this point. So what about purchases? What about, and then there's another group of lobbyists out there that want to regulate the internet as well. I'm sure you guys have all heard about that as well. Where they want to put rules and laws on the internet, because commerce in general can't be tracked. There's a lot of people who buy and sell that don't pay taxes on that stuff, or who own businesses that operate electronically and they don't pay, they don't have the right licensing, they don't have the right regulation. The government is missing out on some of that. So I'm hoping the government doesn't come in and try to regulate the internet. Well, when they do that, that's when your purchases at work will become part of the company property. Because the government will have control over it, they'll be able to regulate it. So, which means, if I were working at McDonald's and I were to grab something off of a shelf and eat it, I'd be stealing from the company, which you are stealing from the company. So if you use the telephone at a company for non-business work, you're stealing from the company. So there's a fine line, and throughout the generations, people have tried real hard to enforce things, and I don't know. Just don't do anything at work is my advice. Wait until you get home. Dimensions of privacy: psychological and legal privacy. Psychological, to have sense of control. Legal, to be able to protect yourself, your credit cards, your invasion of privacy as a law might actually trigger some sort of an ethical issue, but it also might trigger criminal action in terms of credit card theft, identity theft, all sorts of issues. So, privacy is in other individuals. Keyloggers or key trapper software. It's a program that's installed on a computer, records keystrokes, the mouse movement. Now people are so worried about their cameras. You guys, I look around. I don't have one on mine, but people take stickers and they stick it on their camera because there's now program, just like keyloggers, you install it and it just looks at your camera, and half the time you can't tell if your camera's even on. It just spies on you and records you constantly and then transmits it. It's true. I'm probably on the internet all over the place because I haven't covered up my camera yet. But I go around to people's computer and I see them and they got their little camera covered up. I like to just take a sticker, a Band-Aid, or a sticker, stick it on your camera. Because, I don't leave my computer turned on all the time either, though. You're constantly on your computer, you have it turned on, you're connected to the internet. Most likely you're being watched these days. Not to sound paranoid, but because by the end of this lecture, you're going to be like, yeah, she's just a paranoid person. I'm just saying it's happens more often than you'd think, than you would expect, actually. But as I look around, I don't see anybody's cameras covered up. Anyway, screen capture programs, capturing everything on your computer, sending it away. Not on the slide, it was a bit about your camera. No, there's a bunch of paranoid people. They have stickers on their cameras. Hardware keyloggers for the hardware device, capturing keystrokes. Event data recorders located on airbag control modules, collects data from your car as you're driving. So a lot of people think that's an invasion of privacy. What about your car? There's little applications now you can give your insurance company, and you're telling your insurance company essentially everywhere you're going because it's logging your route. So I'm not going to say which company has this, but it's a little USB thing. They attach it to your engine, put the little USB thing in there, and then you get discounts for good driver behavior. Well, it's recording everything you're doing. So people don't like the fact that they're being recorded, so you don't have to use it. Don't do it if you don't want to do it. Otherwise, if you want to show that you come to complete stops all the time and you never exceed the speed limit, you only drive around as often as you say you're driving around, then you can get a discount on your insurance. Email is stored on many different computers. Here's why email is not safe, by the way, or one of the reasons why. If it's not caught by the sender's computer, it may be by the sender's server. If not the recipient's server, maybe the recipient's computer. What about all the other stops that happened along the way? Long story short, it goes everywhere. I like this. This is, remember like Patty from Peggy. You guys remember the Peggy commercial? No, they haven't played it. Usually they play it around the holidays. because it reminds people of identity theft, because people use their credit cards more often over the internet or on the telephone during the holiday season. Or it says, "Hello, this is Peggy." It's like, Peggy? Where's Peggy? You know, oh, she owns the credit card. And it's like in some guy's name or something, or I don't know. I can't remember how the commercial goes. It was like really funny. So, yes, ma'am, I'm calling from your local utility company to confirm something. But they're not really the person that they say that they are. Anyway, why make calls when a computer can do it? Actually, that's another good thing, automated stuff. Anyway, this is about 2003. This is from 2003, 10 years ago. Still, like, take it and double or triple these numbers, and they're still in the same proportionate, actually. They're still about in the same proportion. They're just more incidences of it. Risk of identity theft across the United States, mostly on the West and the East Coast. Not so bad. Not such a big problem in the Midwest because they're not on computers out here. So, we all know about identity theft, forging someone's identity, purpose of fraud. Card and brand spoofing, or I can never say this, phishing, I guess is how you're supposed to say it. Technique to gain personal information for the purpose of identity theft. I just got one of these yesterday, actually. Usually, it comes from universities. In fact, I'm surprised our email hasn't been a victim yet. Maybe it has, I don't know. You know, you get this email, it comes from your company's email account. It says you need to change your password, or you need to change your profile settings, or you need to do something, and here's the link. Go in here and fix it. And you go in, you click on the link. And PayPal, there was a lot of big ones with PayPal about a year ago until that got stopped, where you get these messages from PayPal, but they really weren't from PayPal. To say, hey, click on the link, go in there and change your email address, or change your this, or change your that. Well, what you're doing is you're going to a spoof site, it's not their site, and they're capturing all the information. So here's your email, here's your password. So now we got a PayPal login name and password. And better yet, we'll probably get your social security number out of that and a bunch of other stuff as well. And while we're here, we'll just ask you a bunch of questions. Which is actually kind of interesting because a great number of people fall into this trap because they think the email is legit, which is kind of sad, actually. So now when you get the legit email, people look at that and go, I'm not answering that, when it's legitimate. So anyway, that's called phishing. They're fishing for information. They throw a line out to see if you'll catch it, and then they're going to reel you in to the website that they sent you to, and they wanted you to go to, and then capture all your information on the way. Never reply without questioning to an email asking for personal information. Don't click on websites that provide you with an email. Do not even say, leave me alone. Oh, yeah. The best way of selling a premium email list is the little unsubscribe me on the bottom. Don't unsubscribe unless you have subscribed. If it's something you've never subscribed to and you see an unsubscribe on the bottom or something of that nature, you click on it, you have subscribed. You have verified that your email is good. Now you become higher priced. You're on a premium list now, and you're going to get even more email because people are going to pay for your information now. Before, when they gave out the email, whoever bought your email originally wasn't quite sure if it was real. You just verified it. You just made it real. Now it upgrades it to a more expensive email for somebody else to buy. Because now you've confirmed it. So yeah, don't unsubscribe either. That's not good either. So let's see. I'm not going to go through all the facts. Farming, rerouting your request to a legitimate website. That happens with the Social Security Department and with our income taxes all the time. You go online to fill out a form, but you're not really filling it out on a government website. Actually, all you have to do is when the tax season comes around, you guys don't file taxes probably here. I don't know. But you can do it electronically. Misspell it. Misspell the URL a little bit. And you'll end up in a different website that'll look just like the real one. And then you start putting in your information and you realize that this is not the right site. But it's all saved as you're putting it in. It doesn't really matter if you hit submit or not. It's already captured. because that's what happens. People realize, oh, wait a minute, this is the wrong site. Amazon, there was one that was doing it for Amazon for a while. So I don't know, Amazon, to buy through Amazon store, but then that got closed down. I can't remember. The government's got a ton of it, like the White House. If you forget gov and you put org or you put com in there, you get to some pornography site actually for the White House. It's actually kind of humorous. Rerouting a request for a legitimate website, sending it to a slightly different web address, or redirecting you after you've already been on a legitimate website. That's another trick. Farming is accomplished by gaining access to giant databases and internet providers using web traffic and rerouting that web traffic. Often works because it's hard to spot the tiny differences in the website addresses. It happens when people misspell something and they constantly misspell it. So what a lot of companies do is they buy the misspellings. So you got your domain and then you have all your misspelled versions of your same domain. If you do that, then you're guaranteed not to have this happen to you. Instead, you're going to need to have them all routed to the same page. So now your customers can misspell your name and not get into trouble, which is what Amazon was doing. Well, Amazon didn't buy all of theirs, and they ended up having a few problems with that. So at one point in time, Yahoo had a problem with that too. Even the main Yahoo website, like the search engine, was getting from how many O's did someone stick in there? Wrong number of O's brought you to one that looked like Yahoo, but it really wasn't Yahoo. Privacy and employees. Companies need information about their employees to run their business effectively. March 2005, 60% of the employees are monitored employees' emails. Yeah, so that's 2005, we have 60%. It's like 90 to 100% right now. 95 to 98% of all your company email is monitored. 70% of your traffic occurs during work hours. That's all recorded. 78% of employees reported abuse. 60% of employees admitted abuse of the web services. In the beginning, what they were trying to do is give people okay, it's okay now. Tell us what you're doing. And then after that point, okay, you do it again and you're going to be fired. Because they're trying to figure out what they need to protect by. Actually, now they have really nice network programs that kind of limit access. So you can't download a DVD and you can't do something. But if you do, you get thrown off the network. Cyber slacking, misuse of company resources, visiting inappropriate websites, gaming, chatting, stock market, social networking at work. Reasons for monitoring. Well, avoid litigation for employee misconduct. Problem right now is it's huge. You're at work, you're on Facebook, you write something, somebody doesn't like it, they sue your company because you're doing it on your company computer on company time. That's a problem. That's why you have fair use policies that employees now sign that say, I'm not going to go on unrestricted sites, and Facebook is a restricted site. So most companies will restrict Facebook. In the fair use policy that you sign, whether or not you actually read it's a different story. But if you've signed it, you've agreed to it, which means I can just fire you, get rid of you, no problem. You have no recourse, which is not really what they want to do. They just want to protect themselves against problems. Ensuring appropriate behavior on the job. Actually, the reason why that became an issue about 5 years ago was the amount of child pornography that existed. It was just really sad, actually. And images and pictures and video that was being exchanged on company websites that companies were held responsible for, and then they went back to see, well, what employee is doing this? Employee's gone, employee quit. And to avoid litigation, because now the company's now being charged with all of these crimes. Long story short, what had nothing to do with Facebook or social media at all. It had something to do with child pornography, and companies didn't want to be involved in that. Nor did they want to take responsibility for facilitating it. So anyway, long story short, that changed the legislation completely. Customers also have an expectation of privacy, and this is of the 2005, actually, 2005, 2006 commercial acts. And then the health insurance, I want to say it was around 2008 when we finally got health insurance protection. It is against the law for a health insurance company to store something incorrect about somebody as of 2008, which isn't too bad, because before they were storing incorrect information because people wouldn't fill out the forms correctly. So they would have bad information, and they made it against the law because it was affecting rates. who were being profiled against certain things that fell into certain categories. Long story short, the Protection Act sealed records completely. They can't use anything to determine your rates. So now they're using how old are you? How much do you weigh? Where do you live? What kind of job do you have? Things about your life to determine your rates instead of your medical condition. They cannot charge on that anymore.
It's more about behavior.
And more about behavior, yeah. Because in the past when they were trying to say, hey, you went to the doctor for a cold 5 times last year? They can't do that anymore. So they were at one point doing that. Your auto insurance company can still, however, base your rates on your driving record because they haven't sealed DMV records. In fact, you go online and you do the background check. It's all DMV information because DMV makes it readily available. So all that stuff is DMV records, which is all the, and don't pay $5. Just go to the county clerk's office and you get it for free. Because the government, county court system, gives you all that information for free. But you have to walk into the office. DMV makes it available, limited online, so that insurance companies, automobile insurance companies, other people can have access to that. However, their online systems aren't very secure, and then you got all these other guys out there, bottom feeders, who are coming up with this, hey, background check for $10, and all this other stuff coming out of that, which is really just stolen DMV information or unauthorized use of DMV information. I shouldn't call it stolen. It was given to them, but for the wrong purpose. So some of them buy it, actually. You can buy information online really easily. Personal information, company information. That should be no mystery to anybody, really. Your information's for sale. Everybody's is. CC, consumers want businesses to know who they are, but not know too much. As of about 2005, it's now illegal to store more than 2 pieces of information about a particular customer. You cannot store the full credit card number. You can't store the full social security number, which you could store like the last 5 digits or the first 2 digits or something. You can't have more than 2 pieces of information. So if you have a telephone number, you can't have an email address. Theoretically, I don't know. Everyone's got email and telephone numbers, so I'm not quite sure how that was working out. Without voluntary consent. So what ends up happening is you're talking to them on the phone. Hey, Miss Hacker. Hey, we don't have your email on file. Would you like to give it to us? You say no. Then they don't get it. You say yes, then they get it. But when we fill out the form, you get their name and address, or name and email, but no address, or you can't have more than 2 pieces of information without consent, which is the tricky part. So providing it, and they made it so you can't store information, plus companies can be responsible if they have wrong information about a consumer. So let them know about products, but not pester them, advertise them, let them know about. Computer has information about it. We don't have cookies anymore because web browsers took them away. But remember cookies? It came in chocolate chip and peanut butter. No. I like the, what were they? M&M cookies? No more cookies. Those are little text files stored on your computer that other programs read and used. Spam filters. What in the world? We still have spam. This is the year 2013, almost 2014, and I still have thousands of messages in my spam box. Why? So waste. Unsolicited email. We all know about spam. Adware, spyware, still a problem, even with Windows 8, actually. Even on a MacBook, actually. Now they get you through those web plugins and stuff. So you got to turn off all your plugins. You got to turn everything off. Not such a bad problem, though. Kind of gone away a little bit. Here's adware and free versions of Eudora. Yeah. That's actually kind of old. People don't do this anymore, but old software developers used to submit, they used to essentially distribute software with adware in it, with spyware as part of it. In fact, there's another company still around that called itself not Windows Defender, but Windows something. Defender something. Huh? Yeah, that's what I meant to say, Microsoft Defender. The program is called Microsoft Defender, something like Plus or something, or Defend. It's spyware. So the consumer downloads spyware to remove spyware. because they don't know any better. It's not. It comes with Windows. You're not supposed to download it, but you know, not everybody pays attention to this stuff. They don't know. So you install spyware, thinking you're removing spyware, but you're just installing more spyware. The same. And if they can get you to do that, then they have you labeled as a very expensive consumer. Just like those people that submit the unsubscribe information, you're high priced. You just went up the status level. Now you're a very qualified person for predators. Now you're going to get all the good emails. All the good spam is going to be sent to you because they know you're gullible. Which is actually kind of interesting. And then Trojan horse software. Software you want inside your software you don't want inside software you do want. Yeah, installing a program that installs other programs at the same time. Some ways to detect it. Well, you can go to these websites. Some of these websites still exist, some of them don't. So, web logs, those are pretty popular still. Clickstreams, anonymous web browsing. Privacy in government agencies, about 2,000 agencies have databases with information on people. Government agencies need to operate effectively. However, contact with a government agency, you leave behind information about yourself, which ends up in county records, ends up in the DMV, ends up online, ends up in hands that you didn't normally give it to. Storing personal information, law enforcement stores it, FBI stores it, electronic surveillance stores it, everybody stores information on you. Census Bureau. That's an interesting one. There's issues of privacy with the U.S. Census, which is actually kind of interesting, and which is why a couple years ago, last time, they do it like every 4 or 5 years. They come out and they actually count people, go out to houses. This last time they did it in Spanish, because there's a huge population in San Jose that speaks Spanish. And then they had like little waivers that people for to sign, because what they were doing in the past were deporting people. How many people live here? And they go, well, who's a citizen? Who's not a citizen? And all of the illegal aliens got deported. But you told the Census Bureau, isn't that counterintuitive? So the reason why people struggle so badly with the San Jose Unified School District is because we have more students in school than we have taxpayers and that we actually have census data for. So the classrooms are too big because some of those people are illegal or they refuse to sign the census forms or submit that because they think it's an invasion of privacy. So then we don't get enough tax dollars coming through, and we don't get enough government funding and backing to support our school system, which is one of the reasons why our school system is suffering. California in general suffers anyway, because we have too many unreported illegal aliens here, and they send their kids to school.
But doesn't schools ask you for any kind of information?
They do, but and we had can't remember what the measure was called, and then we passed a measure requiring them to show documentation, and then the administrators of the schools didn't want to enforce it, because what are you going to do, send a kid away? It's not the kid. They said, oh, it's not the kid's fault. You're not going to send this 8-year-old home because the parents didn't bring the kid here legally. So then people say, well, we're blaming the kids. So then the administrators at the school refused to do it. The bill is still passed, though. You're supposed to show immunization. You're supposed to show legal status. Now, ITU is very good about that because at a higher education,
Yeah, I mean, all colleges
Yeah.
do that. I wasn't aware about
yeah, at a
schools,
higher
but-
education, you have to.
Yeah.
It's not like we're turning away innocent people. At the elementary level, a little bit different. It's because they're minors. They don't know any better. It's not them. So,
But did you get reported or anything for that?
nope. No, it's a big problem. If we would just fix, now that's a very political subject, and I shouldn't really talk very much about it, but if we would just fix some of those immigration issues that we have in elementary schools, we would have the funding that we need for the programs that we're supposed to run, because we'd have the right head count. Right now they have to outsource most of the food, lunches and stuff, because they don't get enough money to serve enough lunches to the body. They're supposed to have 100 people, but they have 300 people. Or 150 or something. You know, they have way more than they're supposed to have, so the funding, they don't get the funding for the number of people that they're supposed to have. So they look for outside sources of income.
They ask for donations.
And they ask for donations. for pens and pencils and stuff. And you're thinking, well, what are my tax dollars paying for? For your child, but for every one of your children that are in there from a taxpayer, you've got 2 other ones that are not supposed to be there, but nobody's turning them away. Nobody wants to turn them away, so it's a problem. But half of it comes out of the Census Bureau as a problem itself. That's got problems outside of our school district. That's got major problems. Because then they based a lot of real estate off the census data. It's the same way as they base real estate property values off of school districts. Which is another thing, yeah. If you buy a house in a good school district, it costs more normally. Well, also on the census data, they can tell per capita number of homeowners versus renters in the neighborhood. There's a lot of different factors that, long story short, end up becoming a problem or end up working in your favor, depending upon what you're doing. So these are just some areas that have information. The IRS, actually, student loan services, Department of Motor Vehicles is a big one. So the laws on privacy, and here's some of them here. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. That's the one that made it so health insurance couldn't store any wrong information about you. So if they're doing that and it's affecting your rates or something, then you got a problem. So it protects personal health information, makes it so it's not available. Because unless, for example, you're a Kaiser person and you go online and you sign up for online services, and you're offering your permission for them to distribute your data. Without your permission, this law made it illegal for them to do it without your permission. But people still give their permission. Financial Services Modernization Act requires financial institutions to protect your customer service information. Security and employees. A tax on information computer resources from outside of the company. Sabotage costs $10 billion a year. Employee misconduct is more costly than assaults from the outside. Actually, that's an important and interesting fact. Employees are the biggest threat to the company, and they cause the biggest problems and the most risk because they have access to the computer systems. So most employee issues are much, much higher. And these are now from 2003, but 61% by men. I don't know, you probably, I don't know if you want to do it by gender. Medium loss of committed fraud. Fraud committed by managers is higher, a little bit higher than employees, but not as high. Not that significant. Owners and executives, a little bit lower. So it's usually the lower end people that are doing it. Security and outside threats. So this is inside threats, are the employees, obviously. The outside threats are the hackers, the computer viruses, worms, denial of service attacks. Even today, if we could just keep it down. You can leave. We've already done attendance. You could talk outside in the hallway if you'd like. I just want to finish this lecture. We only have like 10 slides left. Denial of service attack. Even today we have denial of service attacks on websites, things. So that means you're attacking it. You're flooding the website. So many requests that it can't do it, so it takes the site down, which is kind of malicious versus trying to steal something. You're just trying to deny something. So hacker types. We have different types of white hat, black hat, hacker, terrorists, crackers. All sorts of different, and you can read through the lecture at a slower pace if you'd like. It's number 11 to give you a few more interesting tidbits on that. Computer viruses can't hurt your hardware normally. It's just your software, monitors, printers, processors. It doesn't normally hit your hardware. It hurts any files that weren't designed to be attacked. Weren't designed to attack. So things that are on there that are not, like your personal files, actually Word files, Excel files, and email is pretty much the target these days. Affected files and write protected media. Yeah. How fast can a worm spread? Well, that's the sapphire worm. It actually spread faster than most diseases do. So they did a little study about, here it is here. Here's the infected. In 30 minutes, 74,855 infected in half an hour. There was another study that came out that was actually faster than this. Faster than, they did a thing, I can't remember what channel it was on. It was on TV. the virus spread faster than a human virus. It was a computer virus that spread like within an hour, like entire areas were just flooded with the virus. So we just had one actually not too long ago. We had one about 6 months ago that was pretty bad, and it was actually through Apple's. It was on an Apple computer. But they were quick. They did an update on it that prevented a lot of the spreading. So. Conflicted worms, not intended to shut down system, intends to steal information from systems. Operating system, is it attacking? What does the manager do? Update your operating system regularly, kind of thing. So if you work in IT security, you work in technology areas and you're in a company, it's generally your responsibility or the management's responsibility to protect the system, keeping in mind that employees are untrustworthy and employees are the risk. So a lot of companies are, with that in mind, are designing their programs, security policies and things to protect themselves from their employees, basically, and to create an environment so that if something does come on the computer network, it can be dealt with. So here's some security measures. Obviously, antivirus software, firewall, stuff like that. Adding on encryption, public key encryption, biometrics, another thing. A lot of companies are doing the biometric stuff now, where it has to be you who's opening up your computer, or it has to be you who's coming through the front entrance, which is kind of nice, actually, in terms of security protection. So risk and risk assessment, getting down to the bottom here, that's what this is about. Security, intellectual property, and invasion of privacy, all of these things are problems, they're risks to the running of a company. And going back to the assignment that I started with originally today, on the assignment, it's really the intellectual property. What is the idea that the company has and how you're going to protect that? And a patent is actually just one way, and that's just on the intellectual property of the invention. But what about all the copyright measures and the trademark measures and the security measures that need to be taken from a protective point of view? So you could talk about a lot of different things in that assignment if you wanted to. But it all does break down to risk management and risk assessment. In terms of risk management, identifying the threats. You don't want to stick a huge scanning software on your system or do something elaborate when it's not needed. It's not needed, it's a waste of money. In fact, notebook computers that are connected to the network, not a problem. You destroy your computer, not a problem, really, to the company. So that's why a lot of companies like notebooks. They like tablets and portable devices, because they're pretty self-contained. They're not going to infect the entire network. In the old systems, in the old days when we had terminals and consoles and computers that were desktops that were connected constantly to the network, and that were all integrated and sharing network drives and stuff, that's an issue. So next week I'm going to talk about cloud computing and cloud services and cloud storage. And you'll see there's huge security issues with that, actually. In fact, I don't trust anything you put on Google Docs, Google Drive either. Because instead of just giving them your emails, now you're giving them your files too. So you might as well just open up your computer and just give them everything. If you don't have anything to lose, that's good. If you have intellectual property, that's not so good. You're just giving it to them. So anyway, implementing security measures, monitoring security effectiveness, risk assessment, ask the question, what can go wrong? What is likely to go wrong? What will the consequences be if something does go wrong? And as a concluding thought here, it's management's responsibility for what happens with their servers, their communication networks, their Wi-Fi, their workstations, their personal computers. Greatest threat is the internet, and without it, we don't have anything. So if you're not going to use the internet, which is not a good choice for most companies, but you don't necessarily have to give full access to it, and you don't necessarily have to support user computers. In fact, a lot of companies do not allow you to bring portable devices to work with you. Like, you cannot bring a tablet, you cannot bring a phone, you cannot bring a computer into the office unless it's the company's computer, and the company's computer is configured so that it is compatible with the network and that it is restricted to a certain point, has the right protection on it. Because if you bring your own personal computer in, you hook it up, you get on the Wi-Fi, I don't know, you have a problem, you have a virus on it, spreads throughout you infect other computers with it, is kind of a liability. It's kind of a problem. So a lot of companies just avoid the issue by not allowing you to use personal computers in the office. which is actually kind of interesting. Some people take it to the extent of cell phones as well. You can't, bring a cell phone in. Well, you certainly can't bring a cell phone into a bank or into a business office or into a financial institution. That just is not acceptable. But in other things like retail, you see retail employees with cell phones all the time. And a lot of times it's the manager who just doesn't pay attention to it or doesn't really realize the risk that's being imposed by having that electronic device. So as we grow as a country and more years go by, we see more restrictions after restrictions. And the purpose of the lecture is not to make you paranoid. It's just make you aware of certain conditions and certain things that are going on in the world today in terms of intellectual property and, threats to security, viruses, stuff like that. It's all alive and still around today. Not a thing from the past, actually. It's very current. So I'll leave you with that. We're done for today. As I was reminded, we have like 3 weeks left, I think. So the midterm. Final exam will be due. Final exam will be taken in class. I'll have more information on it as we get closer to the end. Right now, now people stop talking. Now I'm looking at about 25 to 30 questions of short answer or essay type that you answer 5 of. So I'll give you a bunch of questions. I'll tell you what the topics of the questions are going to be on as we get closer in the next couple weeks, probably the week before the final. I'll tell you which, because no one's going to study before that. I'll tell you which topics to look at. You'll have 25 or 30 different topics, so they'll be in the form of questions. And you answer like 5 questions. And each question will be like worth 5 points or something. Well, that's 25 points right there. And you would write it on paper in class with no notes, no computer, no cell phones or anything like that. So you don't have to memorize answers. Instead, what you'll be doing is being familiar with certain topic areas. And you'll know the topic areas before you come in. And then you pick the ones you like. So as an example, I'm going to have one on intellectual property. So, what is intellectual property? How can a business protect itself against, infringements on it or something? And that would be like a sample question. And then next week I'm going to talk about cloud services and cloud computing, and I'll have one on cloud. And in previous weeks, Porter's 5 forces model, or compare a top-down and bottom-up approach to Porter's 5 forces model, or on one of the other topics. And I'll go through the list of topics with you as we get closer. Questions? No, then we're done for today. Now I can talk all you want. Talk for the rest of the afternoon.